Hello and welcome to the Financial Wellness Hour. I am your host, Hirsch Serman, and I'm happy to have you join us on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. This show is for people wanting to learn more about creating financial wellness, and we're going to look at different life cycles and explore them financially and emotionally, because we do make our decisions from an emotional standpoint or position, and we want to make sure that you are as best prepared to make those decisions as possible. We are going to be somewhat general in our discussion, so please join the conversation. You can reach me at my website, lifecycle.financial. Again, that's lifecycle.financial. Or you can post your comments, questions, thoughts on YouTube, Facebook, or any of the other myriad of platforms that you might be listening to us on. It's easy to say 'tis the season, and we're not talking about the holiday season. We are talking about the FAFSA season. We have about 2 weeks and FAFSA opens. So many students who sign their financial aid packages really have no idea really what they're agreeing to. That's kind of scary. It's always better to know and do your homework before you sign than after. And there is a tremendous amount of information out there, and it can be a little daunting. But the other question you need to ask, is this information relevant to my situation? So what does one do when they have all of this going on? I would say listen to the rest of the show, because today we have the founder of College Financial Prep joining us, Vicki Vollweiler. She's been on, I think, almost every September for the last 3 years. It's always great to have you on, Vicki. Your insights, your knowledge. I've come to you as a resource. I've sent people to you who've always had glowing recommendations. So I'm really excited to have you back on the show. Welcome.
Thanks, Hirsch, and I'm happy to be here.
We always have these great conversations. We always kind of go on tangents, but we're going to try to stay focused on FAFSA and divorce. Who's going to file is a big question that comes up. But before we kind of dive in, get into the meat of the show, share a little bit of your background, because I think firstly it's somewhat inspiring to say, look, I can conquer things I didn't think I could, but it also gives people the understanding of your passion behind what you do.
So a little bit about me and how College Financial Prep was founded. I went to Syracuse University for my MBA. I went there on a full graduate assistantship. They paid me a stipend to go there. So that was great merit aid. The cost was free. Then I went on. I had a normal career. I was a VP of client services. I was negotiating costs between clients and vendors. I've always been an analytical mindset focused on the finances. And then I got divorced. And as we know, going through a divorce is not an easy thing. And I wanted to find a way to help people go through the process and make the process easier. And ultimately, I decided to become a divorce coach. And what I learned about myself is I am not good on the emotional side, but I am good at helping people on the financial side with their personal finances. And eventually, people started to ask me, now, how am I going to save money on the cost of college? And like, oh my gosh, the amount that college costs, this is one area to really make a difference in somebody's financial present and financial future. So while clients were asking me that question, I was also thinking about my own kids and getting older and putting them through college. And the goal is none of us want to go into debt, yet we still want our children to have every happiness, every success in the world, and how to accomplish that without going broke and with still being able to retire. So, ultimately, College Financial Prep was born.
It's amazing. And you mentioned there as well, which I think is so important, how expensive college is, especially if you don't do it right in the planning and the prep. I mean, just to give you one example, my son actually was thinking about going to the same college I went to. When I went, now I do have a few gray hairs, I admit, it was $11,700, and that included the dorm. If he wanted to go with the same parameters of what I got, $68,000. So we're talking 6 times the amount, and I can promise you starting salaries today are not 6 times what they were back then. So Obviously, this is an area of huge expense. It's probably rivals the other one, the other big one being your home, quite honestly, as far as what are your biggest ones. The difference is sometimes you have 2 and 3 kids in college at once. You don't generally have 2 and 3 houses that you're paying for. So putting a little bit of perspective into the cost, the enormity of what it is, and obviously having a resource like College Financial Prep, how important that is. So getting a little bit into it, we said, it's the season, FAFSA season, 2 weeks to go. October 1 is fast approaching. What do they need to know?
For parents who are, first of all parents, they should try to fill out the forms, submit the forms as close to October 1st as possible. Imagine the schools have a big pot of money.
Right.
The longer you wait, the pot gets smaller and smaller of what type of money the school is able to award, whether need-based or merit scholarships. So important to submit the forms as soon as possible. For parents who are separated and divorced, the question is, which household is filling out the application? You do not need to include both biological parents if both biological parents are living in separate residences. So that's very important. A lot of people don't realize that.
Right.
However, and this is where people are always shocked, that if a parent is remarried and the biological parent, the one filling out the FAFSA, is remarried, you need to now include that new step parent on the form, but you're not including the biological, the other biological
right.
parent. So it always leads to some confusion.
So that's a lot. And I just want to, I'm going to have a follow-up question here from what you said about that pot of money. If I'm hearing you correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, obviously, the closer you apply to October 1, the mix of what you get. So you may get more scholarship potentially versus loans. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. You may get more free money by applying sooner.
So obviously, the earlier you apply, the less you may have to pay back in that financial award. And that obviously is huge for parents, especially if you have more than one kid going through the process. Interesting.
Yeah, and at the same time, for those parents that have 12th graders and applying, the first time, try to send those applications in as soon as possible too. The applications, the Common App does not need to be sent the same time as FAFSA, but ideally get them both in as soon as possible.
That's great advice. And especially because people say, oh, you expect to get, 20, 30, 40,000 in your financial aid package, but that doesn't mean that package is equal come October versus come March. Obviously,
exactly.
There's a big difference. And that's important for people to realize. I'm not sure most people understand that as well. They kind of think there's a formula and you get what you get. So obviously there's not.
No. Every school uses their own formulas, but they award with the acceptances to the schools, they're awarding merit scholarship money then. So you want to get it in sooner. You want the FAFSA in sooner. You want to make sure the schools know that you're looking for some financial aid. It's just better to get everything in sooner.
Interesting. And then, the other one, you and I have had many discussions over the years and the misconceptions and, who should fill it out? Should I fill it out? So I'm going to ask you kind of a multi-part question here because you touched on it, but I want to dive into it a little bit more. So we have a, so to speak, custodial parent who may have the custodial responsibilities. You have a non-custodial parent. And then you also have a situation where parents split custody 50-50. Are there differences? Can you pick and choose who fills it out? Share a little bit on that, because that I think is also a major confusion for people.
So I'm not sure if everybody's aware. I'm going to touch on it for a minute or a second. 2024, there was what was called the FAFSA Simplification Act.
Right.
Prior to 2024, it was the custodial parent who completed the FAFSA application. With this FAFSA Simplification Act, and it was not simple, Hirsch can attest. Yes. what they did was it's now no longer the custodial parent who fills out the FAFSA. It is the parent who provides the most financial support for the student. So it could still be the custodial parent if that parent provides more financial support, though it might be the non-custodial parent providing more financial support. So I'm just going to make up an example. Say the non-custodial parent, or let's not even use the terms custodial and non-custodial, because that's more, I guess, in a legal sense, and it doesn't necessarily apply even for financial aid. But say the parent who pays child support, maybe they provide $1,000 a month. Now, if the other parent, with maybe the child primarily resides there or not, or whatever, if the other parent provides $1,001 of their own money in support for the child, then that should be the parent who completes FAFSA. It's whichever parent is providing more support.
And that's a tricky situation in itself, because I own a home. What percentage is allocated to that one kid, right? There's so many factors that you've got to kind of take in. And I think we were having, before the law became official, they had announced that you and I had a conversation for like 2 years, basically, on and off, as to how are they going to measure and verify who's paying more. So we never know.
I'm going to say this. I haven't seen the government provide a way to quantify it.
Right.
However, when I'm working with clients, and mind you, I keep everything, anything financially related, confidential and separate. Each parent is not seeing what the other has or, whatnot. But I'm going to ask for financial information separately. So that way, when we sit down and have a conversation, I want to make sure that they're best positioned. And we're going to include who is providing more financial support. Ideally, it's going to be the parent who also has lower income.
Right.
So that way they're best positioned.
Right.
But I want to make sure that there is good rationale for how we chose the right parent, just in case a school should ask for it.
So we've identified we need to apply early. We now identified which parent's going to apply for FAFSA. So this is a question I've got a few times. I know the answer because you've given it to me. What if the kid doesn't know? What if my child really is not sure what school they want to go to? So I know who's filing. We've got a plan, and we want to be early. And it's like, but we can't, or can we? Because we don't know what schools to apply to.
Well, the good news with FAFSA is that you can list up to 20 schools on the application. I like there to be, and I'm not a college advisor. I don't visit the colleges or dive deep into their academic programs, but I like there to be a combination of reach schools, target schools, safety schools, and I certainly want some, financially friendly schools. Maybe that's in-state universities. Maybe that's the safety programs where you know that your child is going to be in the top of the applicant pool, and therefore the school's going to be more likely to award merit scholarship money to your child. Right. So there should definitely be a combination of schools on that list.
And I like that. I mean, with everything, we teach our kids, you should stretch yourself when you have goals, but obviously we want to have the safety. The last thing somebody wants is they stretched, never got into any of those schools, and then never had their backup schools, on there. 20 is an enormous amount as well. I can't imagine people have more than 20.
Since COVID, especially since schools have gone test optional, it seems like the students are applying to more and more schools. So yeah, somebody applying to 25 schools is not uncommon.
Wow.
Yeah. Is it necessary? No, I'm not saying it's necessary, right. But it's not uncommon.
I think the worst thing is if you get into 20 or the 25 and then you actually have to make a decision. That would be extremely difficult. That's such an interesting concept, though, because I'm thinking the variables of each school, whether it's academic, social, career placement, financial. I think that in itself would be so daunting. Having to evaluate something like that without somebody like you would be near impossible for somebody who doesn't do this. That's going to be a really tough project for somebody who gets into 5 or 6 schools, even, I would think.
Yeah, so typically in March is when the students will receive their full financial aid packages, where they'll know the total cost of attendance. That's where I'll sit down with families and we'll start comparing apples to apples. None of these award letters are standardized. It's very hard to compare them. So yes, we'll look to compare apples to apples, depending on the schools. If there are a couple that are very similar, but one offers more money, it may be possible to even, request additional funding from the school that you really want. It's important to look at those bottom line numbers, not just the amounts that they offer in a scholarship, because what's the starting tuition? What's the starting room and board? We really need to look at the total cost of attendance, not just the scholarships that they're offering.
Right. And I like what you said as well, because every school, there's no standard format. Every school has their own way of formatting what the costs are going to look like. And is everything built in? Is it, we don't have these 5 items, like, I don't know, a meal plan or something like that. That might be extra. So really putting it on that kind of single scale, everybody across the board, apples to apples, is such an important piece to this. Because the last thing you want is to say, I think we can afford this college, and then realize, there's another $3,000 or $4,000 a year that we just didn't even account for. And we got 3 kids. Now all of a sudden, how do we come up with another $12,000 or $15,000 because we didn't account for everything up front and plan appropriately for it all?
And what I see happen a lot of times to people, so I just want to, tell everybody, give people some forethought. A lot of times they're only looking at it on a 1-year basis. Kids are going to school for 4 years. I don't want a student to complete their freshman year and then say, now what? How do we pay for next year? You need to think about the whole thing at once, and how many children you have. Ideally, you're going to be able to do the same for all of your children.
That's a great point on a lot of fronts. As you said, like, you don't want to go through school. And I'm going back probably 10 or 15 years. I remember I saw a statistic that I think it was more than 1/3 of students did not finish the college where they began college. And if you think about that alone, most likely that in itself is going to increase the cost, because you may have to redo courses that, don't transfer over. They may have some different requirements. So that could increase your cost as well. The other piece, I like the way you put it, don't look at it at a 1 year, look at it at a 4-year level, because, I don't know, I'm making up a number here. If you take on $15,000 of debt, it may not sound like a lot. To some people it is. Some people that doesn't sound like a lot. But when it's 4 years of $15,000 and I said to you it's $60,000, that's a different number, a very different number to the $15,000 that I was thinking for the year.
One thing that I'm always telling parents, everybody has different goals, different values for their children. I'm never going to say, your child should only go to the least expensive school because that's what's going to be best for you. It may be best for some people. It's not best for everyone. So I want you to, think about your goals and values, and then, how to financially meet those goals.
Right. No, that's so important. And I like the fact you help them look forward. It's so easy just to look at today. I mean, in divorce, we do the same thing so often, right? Somebody's getting divorced. They just want to get through the divorce. They're not thinking beyond the divorce. This is also not just thinking about getting into college. It's thinking through the end of college and even beyond. And those are things that most people are probably not thinking about. So we do have to go to a break. Vicki, how can people get in touch with you and learn more?
You can visit our website, www.collegefinancialprep.com. You can also send me an email at hello@collegefinancialprep.com.
And I encourage everybody to do that. It's so important for a lot of reasons, especially there's a lot of information on there. Vicki's always doing these free seminars, which are also very helpful. So you'll see a lot of those kind of things on there, but also reach out to her, get some of her knowledge going to benefit you and your children. And we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Hello and welcome back to WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. I am Hirsch Serman, your host for the Financial Wellness Hour, and it's great to have Vicki Vollweiler back on. She is from College Financial Prep, and we are talking basically all things FAFSA because we have not stuck completely to the topic. We have covered a lot of it, but I like when it goes in tangents because it's obviously relevant, and I hope people are learning tremendous amounts. I also encourage everybody to reach out to Vicki, as I said before the break. I do want to recap some of the things I think just are so important. Obviously, Vicki, thank you for sharing your story. We did talk about what parents need to know going in. One of the big ones, I think, was that pot of money that people don't always realize. They think there's a formula, every school's the same. It doesn't really matter if I apply now or December or February. It does make a difference. The mix of what you get, scholarship versus loans, the schools may have more money versus less money to give in scholarships. So there obviously is a very big difference when it comes to that. We spoke a little bit about responsibilities of each parent and who should file. We also spoke a lot about, if you don't know what schools, evaluating schools, having stretch schools, backup schools, how to approach this process, how Vicki gave us a little bit of the insight into working with parents, keeping the financial separate, and really trying to look at them each and say, which is your best approach, parent A, parent B, which one should apply and why, and give them that justification and understanding as to why that is. So in our, so to speak, FAFSA journey, we've identified that we need to file a FAFSA. Everybody, doesn't matter what you're earning, as we've discussed in prior shows. I do listen. And so that's an important one as well. We didn't even cover that. But even if you think you're earning too much, apply. There's other scholarships, other needs as well that can be met. So that's one piece. Then we identified who. We identified what if we don't know what schools. You can do up to 20. So that should cover you. Now you get in. Now you've got to make your decision. All right, we're at this part of our journey now. What should we say to parents, to children at least? We each have a different thought. Like the kid wants to go to the cool school. We want to make sure that they're not becoming a slave to their tuition 15, 20 years later. What do we do? How do we handle that? And what are some of the conversations that we might need to have with our children?
So mind you, I have an 11th grader. I have this conversation all the time. I think it's hugely important to speak with our kids about finance.
Well, and I just want to throw one other thing, sorry, with this. As best as possible, if you're divorced, we need to get on the same page as our spouse or ex-spouse and have the same message, because that is part of delivering and having that conversation as well.
Yes, but in working with clients, I know it's not always the easiest thing to do.
Right. As best as possible is
right. I mean, a lot of times I'll be working with both parents and, I'm basically their mediator, and we're still negotiating how much each one is willing to put in for college and what types of colleges and, all the different questions that come up. As far as talking to our children, the first thing, a lot of times the child will get into their dream school immediately, and all they want to do is rush and put down the deposit and be able to tell everyone they committed, they're going to school XYZ. And my advice is tell them you're not going to commit anywhere till April, after you see all of the financial awards from the schools. You need to analyze them all first and then make a decision. As Hirsch said earlier, we want the best academic fit, best social fit, but also best financial fit. So seeing what we can do. Don't rush. I mean, unless you can afford, full cost or whatever it may be, don't rush.
And I think the other thing is, once you know what school you're in, start doing deeper research. Most kids are, a football team on TV or whatever it might be that like kind of attracts them to a school sometimes. Helping them to dig deeper. Okay, these are really my choices. Let's look, let's see, let's. I think that can also create some excitement around the process as well. So that's obviously leads me actually into another question, which I think is such a big question. What are some of the common mistakes? This is obviously one, making a snap judgment, right? What are some of the large mistakes people make that might reduce a financial aid award or might not work in their benefit by not delaying an answer on the award?
So what happens a lot, we've spoken a lot about FAFSA today, but we haven't spoken yet about the CSS profile. And a
Right.
lot of people don't realize that there is another financial aid application. It's not at every school, but some schools do require both. FAFSA is admitted is through the government. CSS
Right.
profile is administered through the College Board. And while the CSS profile dives a lot deeper into your finances, it is possible that you could get more money because of it.
Right.
Not every time, but a lot of times they will want financial information from both parents. So it's possible that you're submitting, if both parents are remarried, up to 4 individuals, their income and their assets. So, when you're being strategic in terms of what colleges to apply to, you may want to take this into account. If the school requires CSS profile, and are they requiring it from both parents?
And I don't believe it hurts you because you've got a large income. It just means you won't get money through the CSS process. Correct?
Correct.
Right. So it doesn't hurt. I mean, it takes some time and you're done, but you might get extra money, and it might be a requirement, which is also an important thing to know. Obviously,
well, I guess, submitting financial aid applications is not a requirement. However, like if you want your child to have a student loan, yes, submit FAFSA. If you want the chance, some schools, they want to see that you're looking for financial aid. So, before they award even scholarships, submit the financial aid applications.
Right. So give us, and obviously desensitize the information, but tell us about a client or a couple of clients that you've saved money for, and how did it come about, just to give people an understanding that it's not just fill it out, send it in, and hope for the best.
So there are ways to save money at various points throughout the process. So one instance, I was working with a divorced couple. One was remarried, one was engaged. The child had their dream school, and through a combination of need-based aid and scholarship money, I mean, they're going to save over $200,000 over the course of college. So it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But it was great. Everybody was working together. The school came through with all that money, and it was the child's dream school. So it really works out. Another instance, this is where a student was already in college.
Right.
And it was a divorce, and it was a domestic violence case. There were police reports. There was all types of stuff verifying why the other parent was not involved and should not be required to submit their information, because it was a CSS profile school.
Got it.
And because of everything that we presented, college became absolutely free, and they gave the student $150.
Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes.
And I know, I'm just going to throw one out. I know from clients that I've sent your way, one, actually you appealed and they got more money. So that's another thing that you can do. Sometimes doesn't always work, obviously. But that was something you helped one of my clients that I sent your way. And I think it's 4 years, maybe 5 years later, and they still bring it up. So definitely there are various ways, and that's why it's so important. I think it's impossible for a, so to speak, fresh applicant to college, whether it's the parents, the student, to really figure all of this out in such a short period of time. That's why it's so important to work with someone like yourself, and they can learn a little bit more about you by buying your book. So tell us about the book, if you would. I'm excited to hear as well. I know not enough about it, so let us all know.
So my new book is out on Amazon. It's called College Planning for Divorced and Widowed Parents. Obviously divorce and widowhood is not exactly the same, but I do have a friend who's widowed and, with children about the same age. And there are, we do go through a lot of the same stuff together. We do talk about, the difficulty of finances together. So yeah, there's a lot of information included in the book to help parents with the process. It gives you basically all of the steps as you're planning for college. There are case stories. There's some templates to use with the other parent for communication to reduce that. So there's no tone of voice.
It's important.
Yeah, so there's the practical guidance, there's the client stories, and there's some motivation throughout.
That's great. And I like the way that it's laid out in kind of a how-to, almost like my words, a checklist or, a format to have a structured approach to doing this, especially if you've only got one child. You may do this, 3 or 4 times and you're done. And, it's a black hole of information that you're trying to draw on. And so having that kind of a guide, I think, becomes very important as well. And Vicki, we do have to wrap up. I'm going to ask you again, share how people can get in touch with you, if you would.
So website is www.collegefinancialprep.com. You can also email me at hello@collegefinancialprep.com. And if you want to schedule, free little brief call, you could do so on the website. Just click on the blue button.
And I encourage everybody, even if your kid is a year away from applying, now is a really good time to start thinking about it. There is so many factors that need to be considered. What discussions to have before your kid is even really thinking about it can sometimes be very helpful as well. So I think all of these things are important. There's a lot of information on Vicki's website. As I said, there are free seminars that she does periodically that have been very helpful for people. And again, this is so vast. I wish we could have a 2-hour show on it. But there is so much information, and really having a resource like yours is so important and so helpful for people. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to have you back again. You know that. I am Hirsch Serman, your host for the Financial Wellness Hour. Please reach out to me through my website, lifecycle.financial. Again, that's lifecycle.financial. You can reach out to me for questions for me or for Vicki if you didn't catch her info, although it is collegefinancialprep.com is probably the easiest way. Thank you to CC Schatz behind the scenes, producing everything, making it easy for us to have a conversation like we do. And I look forward to you joining me next time on my next show in 2 weeks. Thank you, and have a great week.